Hey, Jack, I can't think of anyone better to have Bass and Bob than you. I know if Bob had his choice, he would have picked you over anybody. So that's like the best news of the year to hear that you're going to inquire and take over Bass and Bob.
I would second that, man. I would second that 100%.
Well, I appreciate that, guys, and yeah, we're live now, so might as well just let everybody know because the live just started like when you were talking there.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, well, you put it in your description down there, so that's really cool because Bass and Bob was such an influential person in the Lake of the Ozarks area. I mean, I've not fished near the tournaments that you guys have, but the few that I fished, I remember the first time when I saw him set up there and he was just giving away free coffee and donuts and then hot dogs and stuff in the afternoon. And, I thought you had to pay for that stuff. I was trying to like offer money and it's like, no, it's free. And I'm thinking, so somebody that gets up this early in the morning, comes down there, offers, a free breakfast to the folks and then offers them something when they get back off the water, and just the promotion and just being involved, taking photos, capturing the moment. What a big part of that whole Lake of the Ozarks scene. And then when he passed, it's like, is this going to go away? All this that's been built up and this huge part of the LOZ scene, is it just going to fizzle out? Because that's a lot of times that happens. If you got, I think of like in my family, around Christmas and stuff, we always do get-togethers, and there's usually somebody that's real influential in making sure that everybody gets together to do the family thing. And if that person passes away, sometimes it can fizzle out. So that exactly. So that was what I was wondering if that was going to continue. And so thanks, Jack, for pursuing that and keeping it going.
I'm definitely going to keep it going. Bob has taught me so much over the last, I don't know, at least a dozen years, that we've been pretty tight. I never worked for him, but we had so many discussions behind the scenes about strategy and about what he was going to do, and just bouncing ideas off of each other. And, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm going to do this. And like half the time I told him, Bob, you're just crazy, and then he would do it anyways. But I've been there from the beginning. Jim's been there from the beginning. I didn't want to see it go away. We've worked on this too much. It's such a great thing. I mean, I'm going to change it a lot. There's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to change. I can't do a lot of things that Bob did. I mean, he spent so much money giving back to the fishermen. He would take in money, and then the business never made any money. He would always give it back to everybody, and it was so generous of him, and it's so awesome of him. I like to keep things small. Me and my guide business, I'm a one-man show. It's been like that since the get-go. I don't work well with partners. I'm going to have Steve Heitman help me a lot. He's been Bob's right-hand man, but I'm going to have him as a paid consultant, as a paid advisor. But I don't want to have employees. That's not usually how I roll, at least not for the foreseeable future. I mean, really, I'm speaking like I already own it. I do not actually own it yet. There's still a lot of delays with the lawyers, man. They're taking forever to get this thing going. The main thing that I want to communicate with everybody is that, I've talked with the family. We have orally agreed to a price they're happy with, I'm happy with. We just got to get the contracts changed over. A lot of the, when somebody passes away, there's so many passwords and emails and, little things that you belong to this for. And that's I guess that's what's part of what's taking so long, is just trying to get things actually transferred over. But I mean, gosh, there's so many things I want to say. I want to say a huge thanks to all the Bass and Bob members that we've had for, 10 plus years that have been so loyal. I've been trying to put a lot of fishing reports out, but, we haven't put any videos out, and I want to interview a bunch of people and, put that out there on the website. And, we got the Big Bass Bash coming up, and we've had several big weeks. We had the BFL, we had the Toyota Series. I want to reach out to the winners and talk to them all. And I'm ready to do that stuff, but until I actually own it, I don't want to just act like I own it when I don't actually own it. So I want to thank all the members for holding on and being patient. And, I'm trying to put a lot into the reports lately, at least. And I think a lot of people are seeing that.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's just knowing that somebody's going to continue it in whatever form or fashion is just good to hear. And I think that's important. You need to, every time a business changes hands, there's going to be things that are adjusted and modifications to fit the new owner. But just knowing that it's going to continue is awesome, man. It's awesome. It's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, man, I've been a fan of yours for a while, and I'm taking notes. You're a journalist, really. I mean, you're interviewing guys all the time. I mean, I kind of want to do some parts of what you're doing too, Gabe. I mean, you've been doing this for years now, and I mean, you're doing a great job. I mean, I love what you're doing. I'm not going to do what you're doing exactly, but I'm going to take, parts of what you're doing, interviewing people, having this fishing community. It's such a great community. There's so many guys that are giving of their time and giving of their information. And, people aren't as secretive as they used to be. When I first came into the sport, people were really secretive. And, now it's kind of hard to adapt how open people are. Some guys are way open with information. And so anyways, Gabe, I'm learning from you. I'm looking at this StreamYard.com. I'm going to probably join that tonight or tomorrow. And, you've taught me stuff too.
Yeah. Well, I'll say it right now. Anything I can help you with, just let me know. I mean, we've got numbers, we've got contact information, and there'll be questions on the way. I don't know it all, but I can point you a little bit in the right direction.
And Jim, I'm going to be reaching out to you too. Don't think you're getting away.
He's being all quiet over there.
No, Jack, we're always here to help. However we can help you, whatever it is, you just reach out or give us a call and we'll do whatever we can. That goes without saying.
Yeah. I figured. I know where you are. Yeah. I'll be over at your place every time you do good in a tournament or something. I'll be over there for an interview.
Yeah, I don't know. Bob was right there at the bottom of the steps when you came off stage. He'd catch it before you couldn't think of up of a lie or think of something. He hits you as soon as you come off the stage. Where was you? What was you using? How'd you catch them? What part of the lake? Before you could even think about it.
Yeah. That's how you get the best answers, man. Just shove that mic in somebody's face and make them sweat a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got a good show planned for us tonight. This is going to be Lake of the Ozarks Big Bass Bash, just talking about guiding, just whatever. So people out there in the chat, if you got questions, get them in here as we go. I try to keep this show organic, and I've got a few questions here, but we'll keep it wide open. And the whole purpose of the show is just to kind of break down Lake of the Ozarks a little bit. I know the Big Bass Bash is this weekend, and it's like a opening of trout season or opening of deer season. It's become like an annual trip, biannual, or a couple times a year. People, that's like one of the things that they do. Some people, that's the only tournament that they actually fish all year long is the Big Bass Bash, and it's become huge. I haven't fished it in a while, but I do remember the first time I did fish it, I was overwhelmed with the interest and how many people were out on the lake, and it's just a really big event, and it seems like it's just growing and growing. And so, I reached out to Jack and Jim just to come on here and talk a little bit about it, and they're gracious enough to donate some of their time tonight. Before we go any further, though, we are going to be doing a Baitworks giveaway, $25 Baitworks card. Baitworks has been sponsoring the live stream for several years now. And you can see it on the ticker. If you're looking to purchase some tackle, you can go to Baitworks, check them out. THM10 will get you 10% off anything that you order. And if you're in the Springfield area, stop by the store. a lot of good places in the Lake of the Ozarks area, but Baitworks is one of those places to check out if you're in the Springfield, Missouri area. And I'd like to ask everybody to keep Dion in your prayers. He's a little bit under the weather. He's got some stuff going on, so we love Dion on the live stream, and he's a big, influential person down there in the Lake of the Ozarks. Got a lot of history there, so just keep him in our thoughts and prayers. Wish him the best of luck in whatever's going on. Big Al might stop by here in a little bit just to talk a little bit about the Big Bash. He didn't know if he was going to have time, so he may pop in here in just a little bit. But let's just start off. You guys have been out on the lake, off and on for the last couple weeks or last year and everything. I know Jim had a really solid. He's been fishing pretty good in the derbies. What's kind of going on right now at Lake of the Ozarks? Are we in the middle of that dreaded fall transition where things are changing, or there's some patterns that are kind of starting to, hold true consistently? What's the feel out there on the body of water?
Yeah, I would say we're right in the middle of the transition. The fish, we're getting a shorter day, days, and just going into fall, just like all of nature, it knows it. The bass know it. And they're wanting to get shallow. That water temp's still just a little bit warm, but for the most part, I think they're trying to move. You got fish pushing back in creeks. You've got some coming up Main Lake. They're all over the place, just like a normal early fall, beginning of a transition. You've got fish all over the lake, and they're all catchable. And I don't know what Jack will think, but I don't think you could commit to one certain pattern at any given day and say, that's all I'm going to run. You kind of got to jump around each day and see what these fish are doing. Sometimes they are super shallow, and the very next day they're in 10 foot, so it's, and we just seen it last week, 3 days. It was 3 different conditions. 3 different, techniques, I guess you'd say, to try to catch some good solid fish.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, the fall bite, it got going. Like, these fish made a big change here, a few weeks ago, right? And they started, getting shallow, chasing bait fish, typical fall stuff, but and our water temperatures dropped. Back in August, water temperature was 90 degrees, and our temperature has dropped to, 75 degrees, give or take. And so it's dropped pretty considerably, even though our afternoon highs are still, pushing 90 degrees. So it's still warm in the afternoons, but our overnight lows are pretty low. Like, every morning is super nice out there. And the daylight, the hours of daylight have really dropped off considerably. And that's what's dropping that water temperature, even though the afternoon highs are still hot. And these fish are definitely on the chain. Just because you get them one day on one depth or set of docks, you got to be willing to change this time of year, because it's just they're on the move. The water temperature is at a good enough place to where they feel like they could just run anywhere they want. And there's bait fish everywhere. There's bait fish on the main lake. There's some bait fish in the back of the coves, and so they're on the move pretty quick right now. And you got to be willing to change up your plan and change up your approach. And that's one of the hardest things in fishing is after you have a really, really good day, you want to go out tomorrow and just do the same thing. And that can really come back and burn you in the fall. And, I've seen that before with some of these, these tournaments, and, I have a really good practice, and then you go into the tournament day thinking, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And, it could come back to bite you if you get too stubborn and get too many ideas in your head. In fact, as a local, I almost don't even want to practice too much for a lot of the tournaments around here, because you just get too much in your head and get you need to stay more flexible.
Yeah, I don't know how many times you've seen in these multi-day tournaments in this early fall like this, guys will have 20 pounds and they'll come in with 0 the next day, or vice versa. They go out and it's just fall. They just like Jack said, they are changing by the hour, and you have to be prepared and ready to switch it up.
Yeah, perfect example. Grant Akers, our good buddy, you know, he had a massive day 2, right? And nearly 21 pounds, surged all the way up to the top of the entire field going into day 3. And man, did he have a great day. You know, he had all those fish caught by noon on day 2 and did not fish at all in the afternoon. Took an easy boat ride back, just looked at some spots, didn't fish. You know, he had 21 pounds by noon. And but you know, it's fall and it changed on him, and you know, he ended up falling quite a bit on that final day. And that's the hardest thing in the world right there, is to have such a phenomenal day, because you know, he's a shallow water master. He's a great jig fisherman, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, is, you know, throwing a jig here in a little bit. But you know, he had a crazy good day, big fish after big fish after big fish. And you know, once you get a day like that, you can't change. I mean, you have, you know.
Yeah, how do you catch 21 pounds one day and go out the next day and do something different? You know,
Yeah.
you get locked on a pattern when it's like that. You know, it's like these fish are here, they're going to bite, and you know, sometimes they just don't, or they move just a little bit. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. They just moved a little bit. I mean, I would consider this tournament as a great tournament. I mean, Lake of the Ozarks really showed out pretty good. It wasn't as many like 20-pound bags as you'll see in some other lakes, or maybe Lake of the Ozarks in the past, but the number of guys catching limits was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of bags, a lot of 12-pound bags, a lot of 11 to 10-pound bags. I mean, I thought that was really impressive. The guys caught them pretty darn good. I mean, you know, even 13, 14 pounds, there was like more guys than I thought there was going to be. And so that's really great. And even when I'm going out, I mean, you know, we had a trip this morning, had a good trip. I mean, caught a lot of fish. Now, granted, we're not trying to win a big bass bash. We were throwing a drop shot a lot of the day, but we had a great trip, caught a lot of bass, and caught them pretty easily, you know. And just, there's a lot of like keepers out there right now. And that's pretty traditional with September and the fall of the years. It's, you know, for you, if you can catch a 4-pound fish, man, it's going to go a long ways for you. Whether we're talking about a big bass bash, or, you know, just a regular derby, man. I mean, if you catch a 4-pounder, or guess what, guys, if you lose a 4-pounder, it's that much more deflating, because they're just so hard to get, that quality of fish this time of year.
Yeah, no kidding. I think, kind of piggybacking off of what you guys just said a while ago about having a jig locked in your hand, or having such a successful day and then trying to drop that pattern. That is one of the hardest things to do, whether you're fun fishing or in the middle of a tournament, is put the bait down that got you to where you're at, or picking up on when something is changing. Because if you're covering water, you know, let's say you're flipping a jig or whatever, you feel like you're just one dock away from getting that bite. And then you're just one more dock, or that next little stretch right up ahead looks super juicy, or you're just one pocket over, one cove over, and you run and you run and you run. And it's hard to back off of that. It's hard to pull the plug, you know, because you keep thinking, and Lake of the Ozarks is notorious for that, Jack. You just said that. It's a lot of times it's just you're in the wrong area. Like if you keep moving, eventually you'll run into them. And I found that a few times. Like when I was practicing for that BFL a couple weeks ago, we started out pretty hot. We were catching some fish, just fishing a jig and a brush hog or a shaky head. And then we got into some areas not too far away from where we started out. And it just kind of fizzled out. So in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, we were catching them good. Well, it's the morning time. Obviously, the first couple hours of the day, they're going to be biting, probably, most likely. So is it that we were in a really good area, or were the fish just biting because they just typically bite in the morning? So you're trying to figure that out. And then you get into some other areas and they're not biting. So in the back of your head is the bite just fizzling out, or are we in not so productive areas? And so it's like these are that's the little chirping that's going on in the back of your head. And then sometimes you move not too far away, and then boom, they start biting again. So that tells me that either small little bite window opened up, or you were just fishing kind of dead water. And these are like the questions that go through your head like all day long. So it is so hard to pull the plug on a pattern that was working really good the day before. And that's like that battle. That's that battle that it's the mystery that's in fishing. It doesn't matter if you got, the greatest and latest technology, the fastest boat, the finest gear, the best jig or whatever. That's that mental side of fishing that we are all trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together. And somebody left a comment up here about overthinking. It's overthinking
no
a problem. I mean, what do you guys think about overthinking? Do we overthink
no
things?
No doubt, 100% we overthink it most of the times, most of the days. Timing has so much to do with it. You can run into trouble pre-fishing a lot of times. You may get on these fish, a good school of fish or a good area, and you're catching them around 1, 2 o'clock, and okay, so you got some fish located, and then first thing in the morning, tournament day, you run straight to those fish, but those fish are on a timing eating schedule, and they don't eat till 1, noon, and you run there first thing, and you fish for 2 hours, and you don't catch any fish or don't catch any good quality fish, and you're like, where'd they go? They moved. They didn't move. They're just not on that eating cycle yet. And this past week it was just like that. If you got to a certain area before noon, you didn't catch them. But after noon, from noon to 3, they were biting. So that plays with you a lot of times. You want to start on your best spot, but sometimes that best spot, they're not feeding until afternoon.
Yeah, that's solid advice.
I mean, it's and like I said, Topwater, we all know how productive Topwater can be. You can cover a ton of ground and a ton of water, but Topwater can kill you easier than any other bait out there. Some days they're on it and they're feeding up, they're busting, and other days they will not touch it. But you want to run it because you just know how productive it can be when they're biting it. But you can burn up 3-4 hours before you know it.
Yeah. Well, James Watson made that, I mean, he's the topwater master in this time of year. And, that's his bread and butter, is just cover as much ground as he can and try to find a hot pod or a hot bank. And sure enough, he ends up doing that every now and then, winning a big event and just covering more ground than anybody else with the topwater. I have been catching some nice fish on a buzzbait here lately, and I've been catching fish on a big spook. Berkeley's got that cane walker. That's a really good bait. It's like a spook, but a little bit more cupped. It's a big bait too.
It's kind of like a shower blow, isn't it? Similar.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, you've caught a million big fish on a buzzbait this time of year. You can wing a buzzbait as far back as you can in the back of some of these pockets, way past where your boat can go. And you can see the bottom in some of this water. I mean, clear water, and yet you don't see a bass, but then all of a sudden there's a good sized fish. I mean, he blew up on your buzzbait. I mean, that's definitely a thing. And you could do that even in the middle part of the day. It doesn't have to be early in the morning or low light conditions. It could be actually middle of the day where a buzzbait could still get you a bite. It hasn't been one of my major players. It hasn't been one of my my rods on the deck like the whole time. But if I was fishing the big bass bash, it would be on my deck.
Yeah, definitely, because you're only worried about one fish, so you can fish it all day to catch that one fish. Where in a tournament, obviously, you're looking for 5, and you may not get 5 big bites throwing it all day. But if you throw it all day, for 6-8 hours, most likely you're going to catch a good fish throughout the day, on Topwater. And what Jack was saying, we've been doing it here lately. You can see the bottom, you can see the laydown, you can see everything on the bottom, and you throw a buzzbait or a Topwater back all the way in the backs and work that thing, and out of nowhere, a 4-pounder pops up and crushes that thing. I don't have no idea where he come from, but they get back there roaming them flat and chasing the big gizzard way back there, and on Topwater, one of them baits that'll draw them from a pretty good distance.
Yeah, and it's really bizarre too, because we've had this stretch of days here for the most part where it's been, bright blue skies, and like hardly any wind, no wind to speak of for like hours. And then we've had all these warm afternoons lately. We've been in this weather, you know, situation for a while now. It's really bizarre. I mean, here it is almost October. You know, tomorrow's October 1st. Leaves are already falling, which is weird. It's because of this drought. Afternoons have still been warm. I mean, you know, some guys are out there deer hunting and stuff. I'm like, it feels like it's August out here still. It doesn't feel like it's going to be October tomorrow. But yeah, we've had all these, you know, the water's clear, the water's a little low, you know, it's kind of normal for this time of year, but it's a little bit lower than if you were here in the summertime. And but yeah, some of these bass are just way in the back, or you know, you'll find you know, some little small little, you know how we got all these cables on this lake, you know, going from the docks to the bank, and you know, you'll have like a little black foam holding up the cable, just floating the cable. It's really nothing. And you know, just there's not really anything there, but you throw a little jig by there or a tube by there, and you know, sure enough, there's a bass in there, and you never could see it before, but you throw something in there, and you know, you really got to pay attention to how your lure's entering the water too there, guys. Is if you make a loud splash on a bass that's you know, only in a couple inches of water, you know, he's going to spook and not bite. But you make a good presentation, you'll be surprised what you'll find in just inches of water right now.
Yep.
Here's a question. It's for Jim, but this definitely applies to you too, Jack. When boat traffic is heavier than you expect, what kind of adjustments do you make? And that's, I mean, geez, Lake of the Ozarks has got to be one of the worst lakes in the country for boat traffic. And as long as it's above 50 degrees, it seems like there's people out there running around.
Right, for sure. You know, the boat traffic, it bothers us more than the fish. You know, the fish are used to it. You know, they're living out there all the time. You know, if we're talking main lake fish, you know, obviously a lot of times, you know, you'll try to pressure those main lake fish early and try to get them before it gets too rough, and then sneak back in some of these big no wake coves, or maybe in some of these big creek pockets, you know, that aren't getting all that big wave action. You know, that's usually how I try to approach it. You know, but you know, you can stay on main lake. You just gotta you know, try to adjust for it and play these waves where you can try to fish some of these main lake fish that get really shallow in the afternoon. You know, the waves aren't really going to bother them because they're used to it, but it sure wreaks havoc on you when you're trying to fish. That's for sure.
Yeah, and just drive slow. You know, I've guided on this lake for a long time. I've had a lot of buddies that have just beaten themselves up and, you know, torn. I've seen guys at the boat ramp at PB2. They hit a wave. They lost their front. You know, they lost their front fish finder. They lost part of their trolling motor. You know, just try to take it slow. Don't be in a hurry to go 60 miles an hour, especially for this tournament. You know, most tournaments, you know, you got to be back by a certain time. And, you know, things are kind of hectic, especially at takeoff. This tournament's a little different. You know, you still don't want to waste time, especially if you're catching a lot of wave fish. You want to be efficient with, you know, all right, I got to check this one in at this time. I got to check this one in at this time. But just try to, you know, you can still get there. And if you're going 40 miles an hour, you know, there's a big difference between 40 and 60 as far as what your boat can handle. And, you know, I'm a big advocate of Lund boats. I'm in my boat right now, just rigging up stuff for tomorrow. And, you know, the Lunds have got a big, deep V. And I made the switch a few years ago. And, man, I've been happy I made the switch. I mean, I used to run fiberglass bass boats for years. And this big Lund, it's not as fast. You know, top end speed's only like 60 miles an hour. But, man, it makes a difference on my back in the end of the year. Just the amount of big hits that you take, you know, in this boat compared to my old boats is just night and day. And yeah, so just go slow, guys. Don't be that guy that tears up your fish finders and your trolling motor, and you know your partner is just wanting to kill you because you know you just hit another big wave and just shook the whole everything on your boat and shook your back, and you know, just yeah, just go a little slower.
Yeah, that couple weeks ago, that BFL, we were running back and Holy moly, it was it was rough. So as a co-angler, I don't use straps. The boater has, he has the rod straps and his stuff's strapped down there on the front. He's got his trolling motor strapped down. I mean, most boats do have, a passenger side strap, but man, it puts a lot of torque on your rods. And I think you can end up breaking your rods if you've got those things strapped in. So I typically just kind of set them by my leg and I'm holding on to them. Well, there's a couple times where it's, I have to readjust, but it's no big deal. It's all under control. But then there comes a time, possibly, where it just gets completely rowdy and you're just trying to stay in the boat. You've kind of given up on keeping your rods kind of tidy and you're just hanging on to your line.
Stay in the boat yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that happened. And I had a chatterbait that came off and it was every time we'd hit a wave, it was sliding up and I was holding on and this chatterbait was like poking me in the finger. And I was just one death grip away from driving this, 5/0 jackhammer hook into my finger. And I kept trying to push it down. I'd stick it in the carpet, so it wouldn't slide. Well, it'd come loose. And then when we get back to PB2, everything's all wrapped up, behind me.
Yeah.
And I had a chug bug on.
Oh man.
It was a chug bug or jerk bait. I can't remember. I had something with treble hooks in it. Well, it dug into the rod, the reel that I had with braid on it. It dug all the way in the bend, up the bend, and the point sticking out the other end. So that was a lost cause. I had to end up cutting all my braid out. But that's what can happen. You just got to slow down, like you said, Jack. You just got to slow down and take it easy. And it really doesn't matter if you've got, a 19-foot boat or a 22-foot boat. It's just when it gets, or even a 30-foot boat, when it gets rough, you just got to take it easy. Keep your head on a swivel, pay attention, because there's people going all different ways. Yep. They're coming in and out of coves. They're cutting across. There's jet skis, pontoons. There's people that's got 40 years of experience, and there's people that this is their first time they've ever driven a boat, and everything in between. So you really got to be defensive. Definitely wear your life jacket, your life preserver. If there's ever a time to wear that, I know a lot of times we get in a habit of just putting around the lake. Well, on the weekend at Lake of the Ozarks, you definitely want to be, you want to have your life jacket on because things can happen quick, and make sure you got everything buckled down. That's my 2 cents on the thing.
For sure. And, sometimes slower is faster when it comes to running down Lake the Ozarks. Like you said, you take it a little bit easier, ride them waves, right? Read them better. You get to where you're going. Your equipment ain't all, mangled up, twisted up, hooks every other, on your line or carpet or whatever. Your equipment isn't broke. Just take it easier. When you get to where you're going, you'll be able to, go right to fishing instead of, spending 30 minutes getting things untangled and fixed back in place. So I've done the same. I don't run crazy in the afternoons. I'll run my Vexus wide open in the morning, but coming back in, it's a good, heavy, smooth riding boat, but I still take it super easy coming back. I leave plenty of time. Just I don't want to tear up my equipment. I'm almost 60 years old. I don't want to tear up myself. I just take it easy, and I want to be safe.
Yeah. One more, important factor is, so many guys have been here, this is their, 10th or whatever time fishing the Big Bass Bash. Normally speaking, when we get to the October Big Bass Bash, we got some weather. One of the days is nice and the other day is some pretty rainy and stormy. Well, this weekend's forecast, and we're looking at 90 degrees. And, that means there's going to be a lot of recreational boaters out there. If they see that there's going to be rain in one of the days, that a lot of times they don't come down. But if they say it's going to be 90 degrees 2 days, 3 days in a row, they're going to come down. Yep. And, you got the recreational boaters with their, 45, 48 footers or whatever. And then you got 4,000 plus, bass anglers out there. It's going to be quite the combination. So, that's another reason to just take it a little slower than you normally would. And, just don't be that guy that's got the story. You need the, hey, you know what? Speaking of guys, Jeff over there at Trolling Motor PWC Repair. What's it called? A PWC Repair.
No, that's shoot.
It's Jeff. He repairs trolling motors here, guys. And normally speaking, he takes off on the weekends. But this weekend, he usually sticks around town just to help people, save people. The man has saved my butt several times. Repairing trolling motors, having something weird go on. Half the time he's got some parts in stock. He's over in Greenview, which is outside of Camdenton a little bit. Man, I mean, somebody's going to have some trolling motor problems. And, hey, Jim, I want you to talk about batteries too. Batteries on the trolling motors this time of year, seems like we got more problems this time of year because, we crank our trolling motor up to 10 to get around this dock. And, you end up finding out that you've got battery problems this time of year more than any other time of year, wouldn't you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's another big thing is not destroying your batteries. Sitting in the back of the boat, trying to overrun the lake. But yep, I mean the batteries. Batteries require a little maintenance. Sometimes rather than need water in them. Acid in them. Make sure you get the proper charge in them. Fully charged. Like you said, the electronics we use nowadays, the motors require a lot of voltage. It's just definitely important to boats. It don't matter what you spend on a boat if you're not running the right size batteries. The boat's useless.
Yeah, and you can tighten that stuff down too. I remember. Mike Markham, my buddy, he's on here. A lot of times several times a year, he'd take a couple hours and just go through his boat with a socket and just tighten everything down because you wouldn't think it would come loose, but it does. That's those nuts will start working their way off. And, you don't want to find out that your power pole is loose when it flies off into the lake and you're going 70 miles an hour. That's not the time when you want to find out that something's loose. So, if you got some downtime, you're just sitting around the house after you mowed the yard during the weekend, break out that socket set, man, tighten everything up. It'll save you some headache.
Yeah, definitely put them strips. Just like you're saying, maintenance goes a long ways with boats, rather it be just retightening, nuts and bolts and screws and, especially your batteries, restrapping them down, making sure all your terminals are properly tight. Maybe take them off every so often and rub them with a little emery or a little wire brush, and just make sure you're getting the proper connections at all times. Can really eliminate some problems. A lot of times you think your battery's dead or down, and it's really not. It's just a simple connection.
Yeah. Justin wants to know, you guys experiencing any fog in the mornings, and do you expect any fog during the tournament?
Well, we had some this morning, was fairly foggy. Now, the last few days, we didn't, but if it's going to be 85, 90 in the morning, you ain't got to worry about no fog. It's just when you have a high dew point and some cool weather, when that water temp's still 75 and you've got a 50-degree morning and a high dew point, you're going to have some fog. But I don't see any fog this coming weekend.
Yeah, there's been a little bit here and there, but it's probably going to be more like 2 or 3 weeks away. So it'll be coming, and we have more fog in the fall than any other time of year. And so it's probably gonna be more like mid to end of October for you guys that are planning out your other tournaments. So I'm sure, Jim, you got a bunch of tournaments coming up, don't you?
Well, not really. We got Ozark Mountain Championship. We're going on a little vacation here next week. We'll be gone a week. Of course. And then when we come back, we got Ozark Mountain, and then maybe a couple Winter Series stuff starting to come up.
Well, that's good. I mean, you just fished, the BFL. That I imagine you fished the BFL, right?
I guess you want to say that.
Well, I know you fished the Toyota. You did good in the Toyota. Getting a check in a Toyota is a achievement, man. I mean, definitely. I know you expect to get a check every time, but that's still pretty darn good, man.
Yeah. No, it's you know how it is. You go out every tournament to win it. But sometimes it just don't work that way. You go the wrong direction or miss the setup just a little bit, and you just don't catch them. That's just how it goes. You know, you're not going to catch them every tournament.
Here's a question for both you guys from Matt. You know, we haven't talked too much about, you know, how you would actually approach the tournament, and we can definitely get into that. But his question is, would you change what you do from day 2 with all the pressure? So, you know, day 1, there's 3,000 fishermen out on the boat. I don't know what the numbers are, but typically let's just say there's 2,000 boats in the tournament, maybe a little bit less than that, but a lot of pressure. You know, everything's been hit. There's not going to be any virgin water unless you just run way, way, way up the river or something. But so when you get out there in day 2, things can be a little bit tougher. Are there any adjustments that you guys would make on day 2?
No.
I'll say this: I'm more likely to stick a jig in my hand, you know, a pretty high percentage of the day on day 1. In day 2, I'm going to be much more likely to pick up a big shaky head, and you know, just that I'll make that kind of adjustment. But I'm still going to test it every day, you know, for the topwater kind of bite, the buzz bait, the big spook. I'm still going to do that thing. I mean, you know, there are some guys that will fish, you know, more of the mid lake or a certain area, and then make a big adjustment the second day and try to get even further up the rivers or get further away from the weigh-in locations for the second day. And those are good ideas. You know, that very easily can help you, adjust for the pressure, because these fish, they do tend to, you know, they feel it and they adjust to us. I mean, just like the fish adjusted by day 3 of the Toyota, you know, so many guys lost their fish. You know, these fish adjust to us.
Yeah, I mean, you know, especially like when they're feeling this pressure, you're going to have to take chances where you put them baits. You know, you gotta put them baits in some places that, you know, a lot of people don't put them. Yeah, you may not get that fish out of there, but if you don't have the chance to get them out of there, you know, so be it. So you got to put that jig, buzz bait, topwater, whatever you're throwing, shaky head, way in the back of some of these slips, around these boat lifts, on these catwalks, over a couple cables, whatever, to just try to get these fish to, you know, that are being pressured, you know, and get in there where they're hiding and maybe where they haven't seen so many baits, just to get yourself a bite.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one strategy in itself in general, is to outwork the other folks in the tournament. What I mean about outwork is go the extra mile to go to the back of a dock. You know, majority of the fishermen, it takes a lot of time to just fish the backs of the docks, or that one dock that's sitting way back off by itself, and you got to troll an extra, you know, minute and a half to get back there to it. Some of those things can really pay off because you're just looking for one big bite, and chances are that fish hasn't seen 100 baits. It may have only seen 3 baits, so it may be
right. And I'm a big believer these big fish, you know, 6 pounds and above, they're just weird fish. They just don't do what the other fish are doing. A lot of times they'll get way tucked back in, you know, way back in behind a dock, or on this one isolated dock way back on a flat, or maybe one big lay down, or, you know, just something odd. A lot of times, you know, they're just kind of big loners, and you got to get back in there where, you know, like I said, they haven't seen a lot of baits, or haven't, you know, they get wise. They know what's going on. It's like the big bucks during deer season. You know, they just vanish for a while. They know where to hide. They know where to go. And the bass are the same deal. You know, we're in their world. They know how to survive.
Yeah, here's a question from Jim. He says, best bait for an 8-year-old to use to be successful.
Shaky head. Shaky head, just throw it out there, just drag it, hop it. You can't run. You can swim with shaky head. It doesn't matter. Shaky head just catch catch fish. Either that or a big 5-inch wacky rig, Cinco, thrown around, dragged around. That'll catch a lot of fish, and it will also catch some big fish.
What do you put on your shaky head, Jim? What's your go-to bait?
Just like a mag finesse worm, or even like a Cinco, just anything like that. Nothing crazy. Yep. Just something to get it in front of them, something that you can cast and it just looks natural.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a hard question too, because I'd like to say, oh well, give them a big Topwater, but man, you give an 8-year-old to somebody with a bunch of trebles, that's probably not going to end up too good. You're gonna be on more docks than anything.
Not an A-rig.
A jig is pretty much out of the question because he's not gonna be able to set the hook hard enough to drive home that hook. A shaky head's a good suggestion. That's good thought. A drop shot is just going to catch too many small fish. I mean, a medium-sized swim bait's probably not a bad idea.
Right.
He could throw that thing shallow. He could throw it, suspended fish on the docks. He could, and that's the other thing too. An 8-year-old, he's going to need to get some bites.
Yep.
He's going to need to have some fish, and a swim bait's probably pretty decent. Maybe a chatterbait would be good for him too. Something that a chatterbait's not hard to throw. You can throw it in a lot of different situations, and slobber knockers. Put a medium-sized swim bait on the back of that thing, and if that's not working, maybe just put a single swim bait out there for him.
Yeah, that'd be my suggestion too. Is a shaky head or even a Ned rig. I know a Ned rig gets a lot of small bites, but you can catch some big fish on a Ned rig too. It'll surprise you every once in a while. But yeah, I think you're right. Something they need to be getting some bites, because nothing's worse than for a youngster to just not getting any kind of feedback, and even a little bluegill will peck a Ned rig or a shaky head every once in a while and kind of wake them up.
Yeah, I mean a Ned rig's not a bad bait. I throw a Ned rig a fair amount in the spring. I don't throw it as much this time of year, but it'll definitely get bites. And an 8-year-old, he's in a kids division there, so that's kind of a big deal. I mean, of course you want him to see the $100,000, but really he's competing against other kids, so he's just got to beat those guys. And a Ned rig or just about any bait can do that. I mean, they can always crank a shallow crankbait or a deep diving crankbait or something like that. That's pretty easy. You don't have to be in the front of the boat. You don't have to be live scoping that or anything. You just bomb it out there and reel it in. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about deep running crankbaits. I've been catching a handful of fish on shallow running crankbaits, and they've been catching some. Honestly, they've been catching dinks, guys. It's hard for me to catch anything over a couple pounds on my shallow running crankbaits here lately. But they're more like schooling fish in the back of the coves, because they're at times, certain days, there's been a lot of fish in the back of the coves chasing bait. It seems like lately they've kind of moved out more to the main channel. But yeah, I'm catching a lot of schooling fish on shallow running crankbaits, but maybe a deep diving crankbait and just have them throw the tar out of it, or anybody that's going to be your partner in the back of the boat. He might not have the scope, he might not have the underwater vision that you've got up at the front of the boat. Plus the guys in the front of the boat really got a little bit of an advantage right now, because boat positioning is such a big deal when it comes to picking apart these docks. You get your boat in the right slot, the right little spot there. You make that proper cast, and by the time you're caring about yourself, which is what you need to do, well then the guy in the back, he's out of position half the time.
Mm-hmm.
If he could bomb a deep diving crankbait out the back of the boat, just throw it where all these shad are roaming around out there, that would be something else that's kind of off the wall that you could do.
Yeah, the back of the boat, you got weird angles. I don't know if a lot of people, we got some new faces on here, but we got a lot of regulars on here. I fish as a co-angler out of the BFL and the BFLs and some of the Toyota series. So I'm in the back of the boat, and you're exactly right, Jack. Especially around docks, you get strange angles. So it's real important. If a person would really put in the time and learn how to skip left-handed, it's hard to do. But if you could do a backhanded skip, man, that would just be worth worth its weight in gold. So what I've been working on, and I'm decent at it, I'm no master by any means, is a pitch skip. The front of the boat, guys do pitch skip, but a lot of guys you can sidearm because you've got the whole front of the boat's wide open. In the back of the boat, you've got a motor and you've got 2 power poles. And then if you swing over the middle of the deck, you have a console. So you're going to blow up your reel if you're constantly trying to swing over the middle of the deck. Plus, you got the guy in the front of the boat, and you got his calf right there too. So it's just a disaster. So you kind of avoid that. And I've learned to pitch skip, and you can be very efficient skipping a jig with an underhand and kind of pitch skip. So, but you do get some angles that the boater has passed up. There's that. A lot of times, you get the front of that, like he's coming in. Let's say a laydown, for instance. Here's your laydown. The boat's coming this way. He's getting this part of the laydown, and by the time the boat passes, he's already up to the other laydown. Well, he didn't hit this back side of the laydown. He's not going to turn around and flip back behind you. So that back side of the laydown is not seeing a bait. So that is one advantage, and also on the docks too. A lot of times they're flipping what's right in front of them. Like if you're looking at a stall, they're hitting this side of the stall maybe. Well, they haven't got the other side because the momentum of the boat is moving them too fast. So you kind of got.
I'm gonna have to try to switch computers.
Okay. Yeah, you're fine,
Gabe. I mean, I'm sure you've had an episode on this at some point. Fishing out of the back of the boat, I mean, it's really an art form, really. And you've done excellent with it. You got your brand new Phoenix bass boat that you won. Congratulations again for that. That was so awesome. But I mean, it's a different skill set, and there's so many things that you got to pay attention to everything. You got to be paying attention. Okay, he hit this side of the dock or this side of the slip, but he didn't hit this side of the slip. And so you gotta, as you guys are preparing for this Big Bass Bash, you got to be thinking about that. Okay, where did his lure go in, and what can I do? Right. Is his fall rate this? Okay, I'm going to do the opposite of that. If he's going slow, you go fast. If he's going big, you go finesse. If he didn't hit this, you hit this side of the dock. You really got to watch yourselves because if you're just doing too much of the same thing, it's going to be hard to follow people. Right now the fall this time frame. It's all about a lot of times it's about the reaction bite, and the guy in the front of the boat is going to have a big advantage. And just because, the first bait in, the bass eats it or he doesn't eat it. And if he doesn't eat it, the bass has been notified. And so he's on guard then. And so, in the spring of the year, it's kind of different. The guy in the back of the boat sometimes has a little bit of an advantage because, you got to make bass mad a little bit of the spring of the year, get it in their territory and keep presenting them and kind of like make them mad a little bit and keep the lure in their face. You think about the Wacky Rig Cinco or something like that. It just kind of floats in their face. It stays in their zone. They don't like it. They want to get it out of there. Well, I'm not saying a bait like that won't work this time of year, but so much of the time it's like a 1/2 ounce jig. It's a faster moving bait. This time of year, it's a it gets in their face and it's going quick. And in fact, I was looking at FLW.com had that write up about the guys that did really good this past weekend. And a number of the guys had football jigs on their rods. They weren't just jigs; they were 1/2 ounce or heavier, 3/4 ounce. And I believe that's what won the BFL here about a week and a half ago too. It was not your standard 1/2 ounce jig; it was heavier than that.
And a 3/8 ounce shaky head was a lot of them. A heavier shaky head. You may only be fishing in 6 feet of water, but they were keying on a reaction bite.
Yeah, I mean, the water temperature being 75 degrees this time of year, it's warm. And it's 75 in the morning. And then it warms up, and so that's significantly warmer than when the Big Bass Bash guys come to town in April. I don't know what the temperature is in April. It's probably 60, 63 by the time those guys come in mid-April. And so, there's a big difference to these fish, is how fast they want the baits. Plus, there's so much bait fish right now, man, we lost a lot of bait fish this past winter at the first Toyota when we had the lake freeze. I was really hoping we'd lose a lot of the bait fish, but man, it seems like we haven't lost any of them. We still got plenty of shad here.
Yeah. They are everywhere.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
You guys,
they're on the main lake. They're on the docks. They're in the middle of the channel. They're in the coves.
Yeah.
We've got plenty of bait fish still.
Well, to Brad's question, what should I throw in the back of the boat if my boater is skipping a jig? We kind of touched on that a little bit, but I mean, if there's a definite jig bite or a dragging bite, I wouldn't even pay attention to the docks. There's a lot of fish that sit in between the docks, like on the banks in between the docks, and there's brush all over the place. So you could just focus on, fishing that stuff in between where he's not throwing, and you can kind of have a 1-2 punch. If he's proficient at, getting his jig where it needs to be, just let him do the dock thing, and you just focus on maybe the fronts of the docks behind you or in between the docks. And if the jig is not working, then, you make some adjustments with some other baits. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jack? I
think you're absolutely right. We're also getting into the time of year where we've got so much shade right now. The sun's at a certain angle to where, these fish know what time of year it is, even though it's warm. And, the sun's just not at a strong angle right now. I mean, I'm still wearing sunscreen. I encourage everybody to wear sunscreen, but there's plenty of shade out there, guys. If you want to go run a shaded bank, we've got so many steep hillsides on Lake of the Ozarks. We've got so many, well, first off, we got condos, we got beautiful houses, $1 million houses everywhere. And, those offer a lot of shade. So if you just want to go run shaded banks, majority of the day, you'll be able to find shaded banks. And you just got to look at your map, study where, this bank is a little steeper than this bank, and you'll be able to run plenty of shade and just do what you said is, just fish the more open water. And, quite frankly, every year there's a point where I get tired of fishing docks. Lately we've been fishing docks all through September. And, it just gets boring after a while. And the fish, man, we just had a BFL and a Toyota. Those guys are professionals at fishing docks. These guys know what to do when it comes to fishing docks. So the docks have been hit hard. So, what you said there, Gabe, is probably pretty good advice about leaving that stuff alone and, seeing what else is available. Cause, that everybody knows the fish docks when you come to Lake of the Ozarks. I mean, that's always been like that, always will be like that. So, one thing that too, if you're in the back of the boat, if you got one of those, I know not too many people have got this, but like a little secondary live scope. I purchased one for my customers on my guide trips, and it's not cheap, but it's pretty darn nice. You could have somebody doing something in the front of the boat, and you could scan around and find some brush pile over here out of the back of the boat, and you'll have plenty of fresh water for yourself then.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. That makes complete sense. And you can just make a lob cast in the middle of a cove and be in a brush pile. Just so many brush piles at Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, that's no lie here, man. That's no lie. There's plenty of brush here.
Here is a really good statement from C4. Make sure you have established the payback of the boat. You need to work that out. Like if angler A catches the $100,000 fish, how is that money going to be split? I think most guys would do it 50-50, but you just want to make sure you got that kind of the money. Money is the root of all evil. Nothing will break up a friendship easier than money, religion, and politics. Let's just throw them all out there, but money for sure. So get all that stuff worked out. I think most guys, it's like 50-50 down the middle. I mean, take him out to lunch, pay for his gas and whatever. But I mean, what do you think about that? 50-50, or don't you think that's probably a good idea to get that stuff worked out before you catch that fish?
Yeah, you definitely got to talk about it beforehand, and owning a boat is crazy expensive. If you're going into this and, you're just letting your buddy pay for, and all you're doing is paying for gas, you're getting a heck of a deal. Boats are ridiculous. the insurance, the gas, the upkeep, there's always things going wrong with them. I mean, even if you got a brand new boat, there's just issues that happen, and just the storage and transportation, towing your boat to and from. There's all kinds of risk with that. Really take care of your partner if you're the non-boater. And yeah, you got to have that conversation first and foremost if you're going to share the money. A lot of the guys share the money, they split it 50-50. I have fished a couple big bass bashes. They've allowed me to go out of state and fish these things. I personally, well, first off, sometimes I'll fish them by myself just to get away and just, I'll be the only person in the boat. But like this past one, I fished in Grand Lake, and I fished with a buddy that lives down there in Oklahoma. And I told him right off the bat, I'm like, hey man, you catch it, it's your fish. You buy me a steak dinner. And if I catch it, I'm buying you a steak dinner wherever you want, but I'm going to keep the money, And we said that beforehand, and that was accepted, and that's fine. And, and obviously I didn't win or nothing. I got my money back, but I didn't get anything good. And, but just be clear about it. Don't be having any gray area. Communication is just, such a big deal. And, friendships don't come around every day. So, keep your buddies.
Oh yeah, exactly. Cole's got a question. Jack, have glide baits been producing any decent bites for you lately?
Man, to be honest with you, I have not personally thrown one lately at all. I know several of my buddies have been throwing them. They are catching some fish. I just haven't been doing it because, I just take people fishing every day, and just, I'm not really looking for the big bass bash kind of fish. But dude, you guys should be throwing them for sure. You guys fishing this particular tournament, a big glide bait is definitely something you should have on the deck. And I mean, I've got a few of them. I love them. I fished the Missouri Invitational a few years back and did really good with the glide bait. And that was a little bit later on in the fall. But yeah, this is that time when if you want to spend $150 on a glide bait or $400 or whatever you want to spend, this is the time and the situation that calls for it. We've got some big giant gizzard shad. I was walking along the dock today, just got done with a trip. And I mean, I saw, about there was 4 or 5 gizzard shad that looked like a pound each up on the rocks. I mean, they're eating the algae. They're, you guys know how many rocks we've got here. They're up there. I don't keep up with the algae and the plant life like we really should. I don't think anybody does, but there's certain things that happen out there that kills off the algae this time of year. And then we have this resurgence of algae. Okay. And I think that's what those big gizzards really like. And, out in the lake, I'm seeing a lot of kind of 2-inch shad. And then there's about a lot of 5-inch shad. And then about the 1 pound shad, they're up on the rocks. They're not out there in the middle of the lake like all the other shad are. And the 1 pound shad or nearly 1 pound shad are pretty elusive right now. But I mean, you'll see them up on the banks cruising, and they usually run in little packs too. They don't run in the packs of 10,000 like all the other shad do.
Yeah. So is that a legitimate pattern that you could go look for? Like leave the small shad alone and just look for the bigger shad? I mean, would that be a worthy pattern to go look for, or is that just like a needle in a haystack?
I saw them on Rip Rap. I'll tell you that. It was larger rock. I'm sure somebody's going to do it. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I remember saying it years ago, and then that gentleman from California came over here and showed us all that. Yeah, it can be done.
Yeah,
right. I remember he won it off a dock, a big condo dock. But yeah, this is a situation for that, guys. I mean, I'm not really built for big bass bash tournaments. I really like, I wish I could have fished this Toyota because I love a 3-day competition. I love I want to try to be consistent for 3 days. That's really what I like. But this is the situation for a glide bait. Make no doubt about it. Yeah. One big fish, try to be patient as much as you possibly can. I mean, when I went down to Grand Lake, I threw a 10XD for I don't know how many hours straight. I mean, I don't know the lake at all. I didn't practice at all. I just threw the biggest crankbait I got, and it worked. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. what do you guys consider big rock on Lake of the Ozarks? Bluffs?
No, I mean that riprap that they're putting out, the older riprap's better. It grows a lot of algae. There's not a lot of natural big rocks. I guess there is some like around bluff ends and stuff, but it's a lot of this riprap that they've put in the water, for erosion and stuff that seems to be what holds the bluegill and holds the shad. Boat ramps are great places. They're kind of flat, they're hard, they grow a lot of algae on them, and that in return attracts a lot of big shad.
Yeah, big rock is something, the size of a football or a little bit bigger. And you want something that's been established, like Jim was saying. Some of the new riprap, not so good, but some of that older stuff, those seawalls, there's something about the old boat ramps, the ones that don't get used anymore, the little private ones, especially if you get like an overcast day or early in the morning. Man, they get on those things, and taking a buzzbait to them back in, a few years ago, that used to be just insane, a good pattern. And a little bit later on in the fall, but man, we used to that buzzbait used to be just the deal.
Yep.
What's so you brought up buzzbait. This is one of the questions I had written down since I got you both on here. Two-part question.
Hi, Bob.
What's the ideal water temperature / length of the day to really start focusing on, a topwater bite? And I know that's kind of a tough question, but
yeah.
Then when do you use a buzzbait versus a plopper versus like a chug bug or a popper style bait? You got several different styles of topwaters. When do you choose one over the other?
Yeah, I mean that's a question that's asked all the time, and a lot of it's kind of determined by the fish's mood, and how aggressive they are. A lot of times the ploppers, a plopper style bait, they want to run up and hit it a lot of times and swipe at it. Compared to a buzz bait, a lot of times for whatever reason they'll just attack it. If you're getting a lot of swipes or a lot of swirls, the fish ain't totally committing on it. Something like a spook or a chug bug that kind of sits in front of their face a little more, where they can actually come up and hit it direct instead of chasing from behind. Can really have a lot better hookup. And then it depends on kind of where you're throwing it too. Like a lot of times if we're throwing, way back under these catwalks, you can get a buzz bait in there, and you got to be pretty quick and pretty good with getting that reel engaged. And as soon as that thing hits the water, retrieving it, compared to like a Chapo or a Whopper or something, you can throw it past that catwalk on the other side and let it hit, and it's going to float, and it sits there, and you can get your reel engaged and then start retrieving it. Compared to like a buzz bait, it'll sink. If you're not retrieving it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's already time. I mean, I haven't solely focused on a topwater for like the whole day yet this year, but there has been times in the past in September, in like mid-September, where guys have won, big tournaments. Jim, I want you to talk about that one tournament you had. Was it last year or the year before? We had like crazy high weight, and it was all on topwater. But yeah, it's already time as far as that. That is already a possibility. Now, I'll say it's probably going to peak after the turnover. So it's probably going to peak more like in November is usually when it peaks. But it's already very much a potential as being a player right now.
You got to have it on your deck right now and just kind of try it periodically just to see if it's going on.
Definitely. Yeah. And the conditions, like last week we had cloudy and rainy, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they just destroyed the topwater, Well, then you have that followed up with a high bluebird sky, no wind. Those fish, they're not going to roam as much. They're not going to chase as much. You know, I mean, they still will periodically throughout the day, but not like if it's overcast and cloudy. You know.
Yeah, and then you put a toad on a buzz bait, and you can skip it way back up underneath those places.
Right.
Where you can't really skip a popper or a spook.
Right.
Popper or spook. So
true.
Just add my 2 cents, and then also as I asked that question, I was thinking about it. You know, a spook, you can still cover a decent amount of water with a spook. A popper, you know, a chug bug or something is really slow.
Mm-hmm.
A buzz bait and an actual chapo, you can take off, you know. So you got basically
Right.
kind of got 3 different speeds of covering water with the 3 different kind of topwater baits.
Yep.
Yeah, a pop-R is a great guide bait, guys, but you know, for the big bass bash, I probably wouldn't be throwing it.
Right, but something slower, you know, like that that gunfish, you know, that's a big topwater bait, makes a lot of racket, moves a lot of water, you know, it's in front of their face a lot more. You know, something like a buzz jet, a wake bait, it's still topwater, you know, but it's a big bait, imitates big shad, big wounded shad, and just draws fish out from under these docks or, you know, just where, like we were talking, they're not necessarily roaming the banks. They're on these big swim platforms and things, and a slower moving topwater a lot of times will pull them fish out compared to a faster moving bait like a buzz bait or a chapo or something. They don't necessarily come out and chase it like when a slower moving topwater's just keeps teasing them and enticing them.
What about waking a spinnerbait? Is that still a thing in the fall? You don't hear about that all that often anymore.
Yeah, it seems like later. I don't know about Jack, but a windy day, obviously, but it seems like that spinnerbait comes on a little later in October, November, even early December.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done that, man. I remember, back in the day, that used to be a real common thing in the fall.
Yeah.
Especially at Table Rock and even here too. It seems like it's been a while since I've really dove into that, and I probably need to. I definitely like wake baits on this lake. Wake baits, you can fan cast them in the back flats, shallow flats, and yeah, they'll catch them good. I like that a lot, but I haven't done the spinnerbait, double Colorado or something like that. I haven't done that in a while, and hey, before we get off topic, Jim, can you talk a little about that one tournament you guys did a couple years ago? I think you were in the Niangua. You had like 26 pounds or something crazy, right?
Yeah, I remember that. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest though. The big fish, we had a 680 something. First thing on a topwater, it was a chapo. But the rest of those fish were all on jigs.
Oh, okay.
So that big fish was on topwater, but once they started biting that jig, we just stuck with the jig.
He was burning the jig though with his rod up really high on top of the water.
Yeah, no, that was me and my friend John Sapper, and we just had one of those days. Of course that topwater, that was the first fish in the morning. And I buried one of those treble hooks in my thumb. I mean, buried that thing in my thumb. So I took about 30 minutes getting that out while John just kept fishing.
Oh.
So.
Man, I've ripped a hook out of my own hand before, and it's not fun doing it to yourself. I mean, if you got somebody else in the boat, I think I would have.
Well, I think if I remember right, he said, I wish I could help you, but I can't help you with that. We'll both be laying on the floor. So I said, just keep fishing. I'll get it out. I think I ended up running it through, and I know I did because I had to change the hook out. But I ran it through and snipped that barb off and then popped it back through. But when you drop a 680 in a live well, your adrenaline's going pretty good. So I was able to get it punched through.
Yeah, you're ready to get back out there and catch another one.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. What was that bait? We're talking a little bit about wake baits. Do you remember the bait years ago? It was really popular on Table Rock in the fall for
redfin.
over. Yeah, the red
Yeah.
red fin, like the 2-piece, the jointed
Yeah.
red fin. You'd bend the line tie down a little bit to make it really
You could, yeah. They made a single cotton cordell red fin, and it was a big player at Rock, and it actually still is. It's just water's got to be fairly calm, because you got to keep the right speed to get that thing to wake just right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. I remember going down there years ago, and I was in some bait shop. I don't remember where it was at, and I was talking to the guy behind the counter, and I asked him what I needed to throw, and he sold me one of those. He took it out of the package. He grabbed some needles, those pliers, and he tweaked that line tie down. And I'm like, that's a decent sized bait, and it's funny how we look at that bait now, and it's like it's just a standard size bait because we're used to. We're seeing like 8 and 9 inch glide baits now.
Right.
But years ago, like a 5-inch whatever was a pretty good size, hard plastic bait. But it's our perspectives has changed a lot on the size of baits and what's big and what's not.
Yeah, and when you think of it, look at some of the 12-inch fish you catch on them big baits. So for a big fish, and especially like for the bass, throwing a big bait like that. Your odds of catching a bigger fish is pretty good. Those big fish, they don't want to chase shad around all day. They want to eat 1 or 2 of them 8-10 inch shad and be done for a few hours.
Yeah. Hey, look at the rods too. Back in the day, a 6'6" medium action was kind of like the standard. Yeah. And if you got a 7-foot medium heavy, that was like large. That was like extra large size. I mean, and a 7'6" medium heavy was like, oh well, you're only gonna flip with that, shoot, nowadays everything's 7'3" medium heavy or heavy, and that's just the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's
right.
It just changed.
Yeah, go try to find a pistol grip rod out there.
Yeah, like a 5'6" pistol grip.
Yeah.
Hey, you brought up jigs a while ago a little bit, and it sounded like you might want to touch on that a little bit more, and that's going to be probably a key player during the bash. There's going to be definitely some fish weighed in. What are your thoughts about different weights of jigs and then different trailers? That's kind of a really broad question, but when do you choose a lighter jig over a heavier jig, and then how does the trailer action affect that? The fall rate, and then the action of the jig. Just kind of, guys, both touch a little bit on your thoughts on the different things that apply to a jig.
Yeah, I mean that's when you say a jig, it's such a broad spectrum, but definitely, especially this time of year, the jig size, the fall speed, the trailer, it has so much to do with catching fish. Just like last week, normally I'm flipping a 1/2 ounce jig, a 1/2 ounce Crock Gator zapper jig, and they just wouldn't touch it. And I'd watch them follow that thing to the bottom. I'd hop it, nothing. But I switched it up to a 3/4 ounce big reaction jig, a lot faster fall, bigger trailer, and they just eat the thing, as soon as it went buzzing by them. So it had everything to do with the size and the speed of that fall.
Yeah, I would agree. I like having a trailer that's got some pretty good action right now. Something that's got some good kickers to it, like that Nos Craw from Bojangles. I just recently saw where Roger Fitzpatrick was doing really good with that this past week, and he was throwing a different color than what I've been throwing. He was throwing a very, very blue one. Blue has been a big key for me, and it looked like a lot of the guys were keying in on that. It's kind of like an Okeechobee blue or something pretty significant blue, and it's not quite an electric blue, but I mean, you got to have something with blue on there lately, it seems like.
Huh, what about your jig color?
Like
blue, black and blue, or green pumping with the blue trailer?
I've been throwing a fair amount of black and blue. Mm-hmm. They've been liking the black and blue. Or Okeechobee craw.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of depends on what if they're seeing the jig or not. Like when you're throwing that big jig, I literally run out of green pumpkin trailers. I was throwing on the back of Ozark crawl, and all I had was black and blue, and I switched up. Normally, I have a green head. I run out of green head, so I had black head with the Ozark crawl and black and blue. It did not match in any way, shape, or form. It did not matter. When that thing hit the water and got in front of them, they zoomed out there and grabbed it. So I think it depends on how they're feeding, when they're grabbing your bait too.
Well, another good thing about you were throwing that 5/8 ounce, right?
3/4.
3/4, okay. And then in the reaction jig. So I know that jig. That's a good jig. It's got a huge hook on there.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys are throwing 20-pound tests at a minimum here. This is not the time to be throwing. No. Gosh, we see it all the time when it comes to the big bass bash. Somebody will show up with 12-pound test, and this is just not the time and place for that kind of a thing. 20-pound test. 17 is awfully light for that kind of a jig that Jim's talking about here. It's almost got to be 20-pound test for that jig.
And probably a stiffer rod too. Are you going with like a 7.6 versus a 7.3, maybe?
Well, yeah, I was actually throwing a 7.2, but it was eye crosser that Falcon made. It's just a real stout rod to handle a big jig, and when you set the hook, that it's gonna drive, like Jack said, a big hook. You got to drive it home.
Yeah, it's a sharp hook though.
Yeah, but it's just a bigger hook. It's just bigger diameter, so it takes a lot of hook set to really get that thing drove through sometimes, compared to like winter time when it's a lot slower moving baits. I think the fish look at it a little longer, lighter bite. We're a little wire hook, a little more.
Yeah, and for the most part, a lot of my jig fish, or even my shaky head fish, or I've been throwing a lot of tubes lately. If I can get the bite, they're usually coming in the boat. I'm swinging a lot of them in the boat. I haven't had a lot of my fish coming off at the boat lately. So, I know you got to be careful if you're fishing the big bass bass. You don't want to leave I wouldn't be swinging a 6-pounder or anything like that. But, a lot of these 2 or 3, 3.5 pounders, I'm just swinging them because they're all hooked good lately.
What's your strategy if you're skipping? If you've thrown over a dot cable or something, I mean, it's sometimes those cables are just a couple inches above the water and you really can't slide your jig under there very well. If you're back underneath the catwalk over a cable and you get that bite, do you try to just get them up on top of the water and bring them in the boat, or will you try to hook them and kind of nose into the trolling motor and get to them? Because I lost an important fish in a tournament recently. I just posted a little short clip, just kind of making fun of myself because I was laughing in the morning because I still had the rest of the day. Well, I ended up showing up and weighing. I was one fish short, and that fish came back. It's like that fish in the morning. You're like, it hurts, but you still got 7 more hours to fish. You're like, I'll make it up. But sometimes you don't ever get that fish back. And it was one of those deals where I'd throw him back behind a dock, and I was over a cable. And I set the hook, and he was up on top of the water, and I was trying to get him over the cable, and I horsed him maybe just a little bit too hard, and the jig popped out. But it's like one of those deals where you don't have a lot of time to think about it. You either got to keep them coming, or you got to try to go in after them. Is there one way better than the other in your experience?
Every dock is unique, really. You got to look at them. I mean, you got to look at the quality of the cable, how old the cable is, how rusted the cable is. The more rust, I'm going to be more scared, and because that'll just cut through your line. And I'll definitely peg a fish and then run my trolling motor over to him as fast as I can. On my trolling motor shaft, I've got some pipe insulation covering and protecting my shaft. Primarily because I'm interested in conserving my my transducer cable, but I will go and smash a cable now because of that. That pipe insulation I've got around my shaft, and it really gives me a lot more confidence to run up there quick and get that net underneath that fish. Because if you try to horse them over those cables too much, sometimes that could backfire on you. And I mean, I understand sometimes if you get that fish head coming, it's one thing. So it's a touchy subject. And that's, that's going to make and break some guy's weekend. This situation, he's going to be out of, he might be in the back of the boat, he might be out of position, and bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean that's where the line size really comes into play. You have that heavy line, and you cut the hook, and that fish comes up and jumps. If you can time that jump and get their head up and drag them over them cables, the quicker you can get them over them cables, the better. Once they get control and pull back, and then go earn that cable and start sawing on that cable, that's usually doesn't end well.
Right,
yeah. So look at your cables. Look how, if you can get underneath them, that's obviously great. The reels nowadays are getting better and better. Getting underneath these cables. I mean, I've got one of the Garcia skipping reels right here. It's helped me get underneath the cables more and more, but I'm not afraid to go over the cables either. I mean, sometimes I'm going over 2 or 3 cables and just try to, I'm not afraid to lose a few jigs. I mean,
you got to get the bite first, right? I mean, you got to get the bite first, and then worry about the rest later, I guess.
Yep, exactly.
Cole says, "What are y'all's thoughts on the weight for the $100,000 fish?" The Toyota didn't see anything out of the 5-pound range, so that was one of the questions. What do you think the first, second, and third place fish is going to be like? What do you think the weights are going to be?
I'm gonna say right at 7 pounds for first place, and then upper 6s for second and third.
Like
it doesn't seem like we've had a number of big bass lately, does it?
No, it just doesn't.
No, the water's temperature is pretty warm for big bass, so I'll say 6.5. I mean, maybe it's 660 on by Sunday afternoon, but the fall, in the spring we had 2 bass over 8 pounds. The first time that ever happened, but it just doesn't feel like that right now. I'm catching a lot of 2.5 to 3 pounders lately, and gosh, I mean, I'm catching a couple 4 pounders, but not many.
Right? Yeah, I'm gonna go with 696 to 702 for big fish of the weekend, and then you're gonna have some of them maybe 780s, 770s for the others. Because nothing's going to change. It's not like we're going to have any kind of weather that's really going to bring a lot of big fish up. Maybe I mean they're there, and it's possible to catch an 8-pounder, but it's not going to happen this weekend. We may get a mid-7, but somewhere around 7 pounds is going to win this thing.
Okay, I'm writing this down just for giggles.
Okay.
For the future. So Jim, I got you at. Is your first place bass going to be 7.02? Is that what you want to go with?
Yep.
And then second place, you mentioned 6.96.
Yep, somewhere around there, 686.
686 for third. You gotta lock it down, man. 6.96 for second.
Yep, 686 for second, and I'll go 686. Okay. Yep, 670 for third.
Okay, 670. All right, Jack. What's your first, second, and third? Lock it down.
All right, so I'm just going to take it a step down. I'll say 670 for first, 660 for second, and 650 for third. I'll have it really tight there.
Okay. I think you guys are both like right in that range.
And I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to see another 8.5 pounder come through the stage. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Right.
What we're seeing here is, with crappie, it's a little bit more significant where you see these boom and bust. There's a lot of young crappie in the lake right now, and there's a lot of young bass in the lake right now. And it doesn't seem like we've got as many 4+ pounders as we used to. But, when we had 2 fish over 8 pounds this past spring, what that tells you is there are some old bass in this lake. There's a lot of 2 pounders and keepers in here right now, but there's still probably some of those really old bass that are sticking around. So I'd love to be wrong and love to see another 8-pounder come across and win this thing. And wouldn't that be something else?
Yeah, it's not going to happen though.
It don't feel like it. It's too dang hot.
Yeah, you're going to see an 8-pounder in the fall. I just don't. It's just not going to happen.
It's too hot.
I'd love to see it too, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I got 677, 673, and then 664. So we're all neck in there. Okay, so let's go to the next part of this. What do you think the winning bass is going to be caught on? What bait?
Oh man, I'm gonna say
you can think about it for
a jig. I'm gonna say a jig.
A jig. Okay.
Yep.
What, like a half ounce, 3/4 ounce?
I don't know, a jig. I'm gonna say a half or 3/4.
Okay.
It could be a glide bait. You know.
I got you down as a jig.
Okay.
I'm going to say a big swim bait.
Okay.
Something that the glide baits are definitely cool, but a swim bait's a little different than a glide bait. I'm going to say a swim bait. It's faster, and you can put it in cooler places. So, Berkeley cold shad kind of swim bait.
And that's coming from someone. What was that swim bait you were throwing? Was it a BFL or a Costa? A few years back, you had big bass in, and it was right around September, October. It might have been first week of October, and you were throwing a big swim bait, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what brand that was. It was a soft swim bait. It was on a dock corner.
With a jig head, or was it was it a swim bait with a jig head? Like a soft body paddle tail type of deal, or was it all in one, like an osprey or something like that?
Gosh, I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a while, so it was most likely a jig head with a plastic, like a Zoom swimmer or something like that.
Yeah.
Before they started coming out with all the ones that were all attached. You kind of had to make the stuff up yourself back, several years ago.
I do remember that fish, though. That thing was a tank.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I remember. I know exactly what dock it was on.
Yeah, I bet you do. You'll never forget that dock.
Nope.
I'm going with
the dock's gone now.
Head.
Yeah.
Big shaky head with a big worm is what I'm going with.
Okay. What kind of worm?
Just like a mag trick worm or something, something big.
I will say this, guys, man, the jig this year, I mean, the jig's always been good. I mean, ever since back in the day when Danny Brower was the man here, the jig's always been good. Jim, you've caught a million fish on a jig.
Yeah.
But the jig has been it's been pretty good here the last few weeks. I mean, you can say that every fall, but man, it's been good lately.
I'll say definitely more money fish will be caught on a jig than anything else.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Yeah. I see Steve Heitman chimed in here with his prediction.
Yeah, he's got his guess.
Yeah, okay.
644, 629, 609. Jig behind the docks.
Wow, that's kind of low. Yeah. But we'll see. Yeah.
We got a couple spinner baits. That was I considered a spinner bait. And I can see somebody going up the river and catching a high 6 up there on a spinner bait.
Yeah.
They're up there.
You never count out a spinnerbait, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't made that river run yet this year. I haven't been up there once, past the 50 or 60.
Yeah.
I mean, I know guys are catching them up there, and it's always a good idea to go up there for this big bass bash.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the river, like you said, it'll put them out. It seemed like it kind of run its course late August, early September this year, and it kind of fizzled out there.
Yeah.
But you know how the river is. River can turn on and put them out. That's for sure.
Yeah, a lot more of the guys were fishing like the 40s.
Yes. Yep, mid-lake, lower, down around the Four Corners seemed to be pretty hot for a while, but it seems like it's kind of run its course, But once we have another cool down, a little more, cooler down, it gets a little later in the year. Some of them areas will turn right back on. I said it earlier. The bass could be won anywhere on the lake right now.
Man, that one day last week we got absolutely drowned out there. I mean, it felt like we had a couple inches of rain on us.
Yeah, that was Tuesday.
Yeah. But I mean, for the most part, we've been in a huge drought for like weeks, and ever since Tuesday, it feels like we've been in this huge drought. So,
let's give away a Baitworks gift card here. Let me get this sucker up and running here. All right, we're going to give away a $25 Baitworks gift card. If you want to get involved in the giveaway, hashtag BBB for Big Bass Bash. Make sure the B's are all capital, and we'll let that run for just a little bit. So you mentioned anywhere in the lake has the potential to win the bass, the Big Bass Bash. It's just consistent. There's not, sometimes one area is fishing a little bit better, but you think it can be pretty much anywhere.
I do right now. I mean, just not that you keep bringing up the Toyota series, but there was guys all over this lake. There was guys up the Glaze in the Gravois, lower in, up the river, in the Angwas, and everybody brought in about the same amount of fish. As far as which end or where is putting out the biggest ones right now, I don't know. I don't think right now you could literally say this is where you need to go to catch the biggest fish. I think anywhere on the lake, you just got to get in front of the right fish at the right time right now.
Yeah. It seems like that's like in the winter, a lot of guys seems they focus up towards the dam and stuff. That's kind of a
totally different.
Yeah, totally.
Here there was a Show Me Classic out of, I don't even know if it was a classic. Yeah, there was a classic. There was another one just a week ago or 2 weeks ago out of Drake Harbor, and they couldn't go below Hurricane Deck, and it took 19 pounds. So big fish were caught up that way. Compared to somewhere else, they couldn't go below Hurricane Deck. So there's big fish up there too.
Mm-hmm. Well, something I also wanted to touch on a little bit before we wrap her up. You guys have both been guiding for quite a while. That's kind of a unique job. Some people say it's a dream job. I know it's a lot of work. I've spent some time hanging out with Del Coven, and he's talked about, kind of the hidden things that guides have to do that people don't see, like the preparation and the scouting and making sure that, they've got all the equipment and the knowledge on how to run the body of water that they're on. It's kind of completely switched gears here, but what is, what are some of your favorite things about guiding? Obviously you like it. You've been doing it for a while. You've probably come across all different kinds of clients, all different stories. Sometime you may be a counselor. Sometime you're, you're there with grieving folks, and there's just all different kinds of scenarios. So what are some of the things that you guys enjoy and maybe not so much enjoy about being a guide?
I will agree. It is a lot of work. I mean, Jack's been doing it, longer than anybody on the Ozarks. And Jack, well, I don't want to talk for Jack. I'll let him talk for himself. But he catches every fish that swims on the Ozarks. Where I mainly are crappie and bass. Denise and I. That's all we do. But the funnest part is kids or anybody that really doesn't catch a lot of fish, and you can take them out and show them new stuff, and they catch fish and just have a good time and kind of bring you back to what the fishing's all about. Just getting out on the water, getting in nature, and just enjoying a day on the water and catching a lot of fish. Is totally different than tournament angling, tournament fish, which is stressful. You're looking for 5 big fish. It's a total different aspect. And the guiding kind of brings you back to just what it's all about. Going out, having fun, taking father, son, family members, whatever out. It's kind of brings you back, even though I've been tournament fishing for 35 years, I guess 40 years. It brings you back to what fishing's really all about getting out and enjoying the outdoors and the wildlife and the eagles, and all the different crazy stuff you see out on the water.
Yeah, and I mean, Jim, you'll agree with this, man. Every day is drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if other lakes are like this, but my gosh, it changes. It changes all the time. Our customers change, and so we gotta adapt drastically different. I mean, it's drastically. If I go out 7 days in a week, it's 7 different game plans, pretty much, all geared to what they want and what they can do, and hopefully, I can get a good feel for what they can do beforehand, and then kind of a match that with what's going on with the water. Because I mean, for me, I gotta look no further than the last 2 days. You know, today had a great trip. Had this real old lady. She was like 80 years old. It was her birthday. She hasn't fished in years. She didn't care what species she wanted to catch. Man, we whacked them. You know, we caught a lot of bass today. It was a great, fun trip.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a hoot, and you know, she's whacking these fish on a drop shot, and she caught fish on some other stuff, and then we caught a few catfish so they can have a nice dinner. But then, you know, yesterday was a nightmare of a trip. I had a guy show up with his wife. They were pretty adamant about trolling for crappie. You know, I'm like, you know, hey, we'll give it a good try. You know, I haven't been trolling a lot lately, but it can happen. It could work. And so we gave it a good try. You know, we caught a few crappie, caught really a variety of other species too. And, you know, like little bass and white bass and drum and, you know, little throwback crappies. And man, after we've been doing this for a few hours, you know, I'm like, we've only got 4 or 5 crappie in the live well, you know, because we've been doing all this, catching all these other fish. I'm like, we got to put this down. We gotta concentrate on brush pals and on live scope. And that's how you're actually going to catch crappie. And, you know, that was not okay. They did not like that. She was complaining about that. And, you know, quite frankly, they're going to be put on the list where I'm not going to take them out again. And
you're going to call me.
Wow.
Hey, I got this.
Call Jim.
Yeah, exactly. I know
I'm
this
like,
other
you know,
guy.
I tried doing what they wanted to do. You know, and at the end of 3 hours, we barely got anything in the live well. Like we gotta concentrate now, guys. We gotta make a mental switch, and we started doing it, and it was working. And they didn't like it. You know, they were throwing where they wanted to throw, and you know, I was glad it was over. You know, and we still caught fish. I mean, it wasn't like it was horrible, but I mean, you don't tell us what to do. Let's work together with what the fish want to do and what's been working lately, and let me guide you to what's you know how it can work. Because if you come in here with what you want to do and you're a pond guy, or you fish up north, or you know whatever, you know, I mean, we just want to catch fish. We want to make you happy. So don't kind of push us into a certain direction that you think it should go. And so many people have got limitations and too many guidelines that they want. And you know, we just want to see you catch fish.
Yeah, I mean, it's different if you hire somebody because you want to learn how to use forward-facing sonar, or you want to learn how to fish docks with a jig or something. You know, that's a completely different guide trip. But what you're talking about is, I mean, they're hiring you for your knowledge and your expertise on how to catch fish. So let's go catch some fish, you know?
Yeah, and I told them right off the bat, like, hey, I do a lot of trolling at times. You know, May in particular is a great time of year to go trolling. You know, but I told them, you know, especially as hot as it's been, it has not turned on. I mean, I'm not a huge troller to begin with. I just do it at times. And I told them all this beforehand. So,
yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of times preparing, you know, to be on the fish and what's working the best at any given time. So we're not wasting time just out there casting, messing around. You know, we want the clients to catch fish and a lot of fish. But like you said, it all depends on what someone's after. You know, if they're like, I don't care about numbers. I want to try to catch my biggest one of my life. Well, that kind of changes things. And they're prepared and they know we're probably not going to catch a lot. But when we do, there'll be big ones compared to people that say, well, I haven't been fishing. I just want to catch a lot of fish and have fun. Well, then it switches up. And I think you're kind of paying us to know what to do in each circumstance to make the trip all it can be for what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, if you got a client that's acting up, you just make them burn a 10XD for an hour. That's their punishment.
Yeah.
Hey, I like those 10XDs.
I don't. So
yeah, they wear you out, man. All right, let's draw for that $25 gift card. Here we go. Round and round and round it goes.
Oh,
Mike Roten. Congratulations, Mike. Get a hold of me on Facebook at Gabe Montgomery Fishing, or 10 Horse Monty, or Instagram at 10 Horse Monty 6, and I will get you taken care of. Congratulations. Yeah. So what about, get rid of this here. What about kind of crazy guide stories? I'm sure you guys have got this question before. Has anybody like ever fell out of the boat, or has anybody ever got hooked, and bad part of their body and changed the whole outcome of the day?
I've never had anyone fall out of the boat. Everyone's always made it back.
Yeah. Didn't have to take anybody
on the dock yet.
Yeah, never had anyone pass away on a trip. Those are all good. I have had a couple get hooked. Usually when we're throwing chug bug or stuff, but usually in the finger or maybe the shin or something. If they, I drop the fish, it's usually my fault, because especially with treble hooks, I don't know how Jack is. I'm assuming the same, but we take everything off of every bait. You know what I'm saying? I don't make or expect my clients to even touch a fish unless they really want to. I take them all off, and then that way, if someone's going to get a hook, it's going to be me. But I wish I had and that's funny, because you get that question a lot from people. I can't think of anything that's been like just super crazy out there. You know what I'm saying? It's just haven't had it.
That's a good thing. I would think.
Now, Jack, I'm sure Jack's got some stories.
He just looks like he's got some stories.
I mean, nothing too crazy. I mean, I've had a couple people fall in. I had a kid fall in one time. It's not because of a wave or anything crazy like that. I remember, we were just crappie fishing on a main lake dock, and for some reason, next thing you knew, he was just in the water, and I grabbed him so dang fast, his head didn't even get wet.
Yeah.
But I did lose the rod, and it was like in 60 feet of water, and it was like a G. Loomis rod back in the day. So that stung a little bit. But yeah, like that was the thing. Then I remember one guy, like, for some reason we were throwing a lizard, right? I don't even know when the last time I even threw a lizard was. Probably this one guy. And it was in the spring of the year. He was on the back deck sitting down, and he set the hook and missed a fish, and that lizard came back and smacked him right in the face. And and it was kind of like slow motion, but it didn't hurt him. It didn't hook him, but it was enough to just like jostle him a little bit. And he just slow motion rolled into the lake. And me and his wife were laughing at him. And he didn't like that. And we couldn't get him back on board too. That took a while to get him on board. And we were in like shallow water. So he was a big old boy, and we just had him walk up on the bank and then walk onto the boat. And there was another time I had a guy, we were at the 2 mile marker boat ramp. A lot of you guys know where that's at, off W. Real shallow gravel ramp. There's no dock there. And so you got to kind of jump on the boat and jump off the boat. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Anyways, we had a guy that I had jumped off the boat first, and I put my arm out there to help him step off, because it's kind of a step, And I mean, it's real shallow water. Well, he didn't use my hand. He's like, "Oh, I got it." And the next thing you know, he hits the ground and he rolls into the lake, and he's just like rolling there, like back and forth like a whale stuck. And me and his wife are just laughing at him again. This is a different couple, by the way. It's not the same couple. And like, we're laughing because you're in 3 inches of water, dude. You're fine. But his phone's getting wet, and he's getting all upset about us. And yeah, that probably didn't help my tip at all.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had a few people get hooked. Just let us unhook the fish. Any kind of trebled hooked fish, let us unhook them. I've got some PTSD from people trying to unhook their own treble hooked fish. So just let me do it. I'm quick with the pliers. Yep. I've got pliers in the front, the middle, and the back of my boat, easily accessible. Let me unhook every catfish too. So just, too many issues with that in the past.
Yeah, I have had a couple kids pull the strap on the south boat. And you can see it coming. You're like, hey, don't mess with that. Hey, don't mess with that. And before you know it, it goes off, and you're like, I knew it was going to happen.
That's scary too. I've had that happen before. That'll wake.
Wow. Oh yeah, it usually scares them too. But nope. Well, I hate to get off here, but I got 1% on my phone here, so I'm probably going to lose you guys. But hey, Gabe, I really appreciate you having me on here. And again, Jack, congrats on acquiring Bass and Bob. You're the best one for it. You're going to do great with that. So other than that, I'll stay on here until my phone shuts off.
I appreciate your knowledge and sharing it with us, Jim. And we got 2 guides on here. They're 2 of the best on the lake. So if you're on here and you're looking to go out and spend some time with a guide on Lake of the Ozarks, Jim and Denise Dill Guide Service. His wife's also a guide. She's an excellent fisherwoman as well. And then Jack's Guide Service. Both can put you on some fish and have a fun day in the boat. Which to me, that's just as important. It's always great to catch fish, but having a good experience is
right.
Worth the money.
And I can promise you're going to have a good time. You go out, you're going to have a safe time. We're going to do everything to catch fish and keep you safe and have an enjoyable day, on the water. That's our goal.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap this up, I'm going to give everybody in the chat a second or a minute or two to ask any questions about the Big Bass Bash. If something hasn't been covered tonight and it's in the back of your head and you want to ask it right now, would be a good time to ask it before we wrap this up. Brad was saying, have you guys ever removed any air tags? I think that's like a kind of a tracking device that somebody could slip in your rod box or your rear storage compartment, and they can find all your waypoints as you're running around the lake. Is that
never? No, but I think
it will now. It probably will now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes how people know. They're like, oh, hey, this dock, I caught him. And I'm like, how you find that? Maybe that's what's going on.
Probably what's going on. You're getting tracked everywhere you go.
Huh. Never thought about that one.
Yeah, my kids.
Pretty easily done now. I mean, we just bought some air tags. So yeah, it wouldn't be hard to do that.
Yeah. Huh. Put a pack of worms, put an air tag in there, and just shove it in your glove box or something in the back of the glove box while the.
See, now I'm gonna have to go out and buy one of them air tags and run it over my boat, see if I'm being tracked.
I'm thinking I need to buy a couple dozen, and every time I fish with somebody, I'll just leave an air tag in their boat. I'll be the ultimate hole buzzard.
Yeah, now you're down in Kentucky. Kentucky Bay.
Right.
We really bounce around a lot more than what people think, anyways. I mean, I've got a few good docks, or a few good spots here and there, but for the most part, we're all on the move. We don't go hit the same stuff day after day very often. That's unusual,
Yep. Because you're picking people up different areas to, everybody knows.
I lost you there.
Yeah, I'm probably about gone here.
I
I jumped around. I've spent a lot of time in the river this time of year, but this past week I was in the gravel the whole week. So, totally different. Switch it up, jump around and work the patterns of the Ozarks instead of spots.
Hey, Jim, real quick before we lose you, I like to ask this question: if you had 2 hours to fish and one bait and the fish are absolutely going to crush that bait. Like if you tie that bait on, you go fishing for 2 hours, not just Lake of the Ozarks, anywhere, and you could throw that bait and get bit. What would that bait be?
3/4 ounce Crack Gator head knocker buzz bait, black and gold.
Ooh, yeah.
On 50-pound braid and a heavy rod.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat it. When they're crushing that thing, it is so much fun. You're swinging 3, 4, 5 pounders. It's a blast. And when they hit it, they crush it,
50-pound braid, go big or go home.
Exactly.
I
throw that buzz bait on braid anyways all the time. You know how we were talking, throwing over them cables and stuff. You don't care. You throw over the stiff arms, 3, 4 cable. It doesn't matter. If you got that braid, you can horse them like anything. And yeah, you lose some, but you get a lot of them too.
What rod are you throwing? Like a 7.6 or something pretty heavy?
Yeah, actually, it's a 7'2" eye crosser. It's called Jason Christie eye crosser by Falcon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I like Falcon rods. They make. I've been fishing with Virtus rods for the last couple of years, but it was.
Virtus makes a good rod. Yeah, they were, but then they kind of went away a little bit. But I don't know. I've been throwing them Falcons for about 30 years now, I think.
Yeah, they make a dang good rod.
Yeah.
They're a really good rod. I like the Cara. I got several of the Cara rods.
Yeah, the Caras, the experts, the low riders. They all have their place. Really, different price points and different ones.
Yep. So Jack, same question. 2 hours to fish one bait, and they're going to absolutely crush it like they've never seen it before. What are you going with?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the opposite of what Jim said. I'm going to go out there with a shaky head. I mean, I want to catch fish. I want to catch a lot of them. And, Lake of the Ozarks, we're not throwing a lot of your real small shaky heads most of the time. We're throwing a little bit beefier than I'm not throwing this on an 8-pound test, but I'm going to throw, like a 7-inch worm. Bojangles has got a smoke pole. That's been working great lately. I'm throwing it on a bait casting rod with like 15 to 17-pound test and a 5/16 ounce head. That would be my answer. I like to catch fish and man, this year, I mean, even going back into like May, June, we just caught 1 million fish on shaky heads for a while there. And then it kind of went away for a little bit, but man, the last few weeks, it's been good again. And, it's something I can put in a lot of places. I mean, I can go fish a bluff with a shaky head. I can fish a dock. I can fish empty slip. I mean, I could, I could just do everything with it. I mean, we go through a lot of shaky heads around here.
Yep.
Is that 5/16 like probably the most versatile weight for just about any situation?
Probably.
A quarter to 5/16 probably get you to take care of just about any situation. I mean, unless you're fishing super, super deep but I mean, in general, like 75% of the time, is that probably what you'd be tying on?
I mean, there's times I throw a lot of quarters too. I mean, I definitely throw quarters, but
yeah.
I mean, lately I've been throwing this one. It's just get it up here. I've got no affiliation with these guys, but this is Jeremy Lawyer's shaky head, and it's just good for skipping docks. Is why I've been throwing it. And
is that got a keeper on it, like a twist keeper?
Yeah, it's got a spiral keeper. I don't know where my camera is.
Oh yeah, there you go. I see it now.
EWG hook. It's this one's a little bit more of a skipping one because that's been the big thing lately is really dissecting these docks. So that's been working good lately. I need to get some more of them. I hope they're still making these things. But I mean, for years I used the Crock Gator ones. I mean, I like those. Those ones don't skip quite as good. But I mean, I imagine everybody's still got a good stash of Crock Gator shaky heads. They were the mainstay for several years here.
Yeah, and they're still making those. I'm just looking here to see if there's anything that we missed before we.
Yeah, Berkeley's got a 7-inch worm in their Max Scent series that, man, we've caught a lot of fish on those things. I mean, for a while there, this summer, you couldn't even hardly buy those Max Scent worms.
Yeah.
In that 7-inch, it's a good sized worm. It's not your typical finesse worm,
Should you stick with 4 or less rods rigged up, or leave 10 rods for options? I think somebody else was asking that about 10 rods, or just put 2 rods with your confidence bait in your hand and cover water for the bash?
If I had to choose between the two, I'm much more likely to choose 10, and then I'll put them away as the day goes on. But you got to be kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, is have an open mind, and they get in a lot of different moods, and a lot of times they'll be in that mood for the day, but by the time tomorrow comes around, they're going to change their mind. And they're fish. They like to change their mind pretty often this time of year. So yeah, I'm going to start off with 10 rods on the deck. I mean, one thing we haven't talked a lot about is the tube. I'm flipping a lot of tubes lately.
I love it too.
I wouldn't say it's the best thing for the big bass bash, but man, I can get into some spots with my tube that I can't get into anything else with. I mean, a tube can slide in there, and I look like Denny Brower over there pitching underneath these docks with a tube. It gets in the tighter spots easier. It skips better.
Yeah, and it's got a different profile than anything. It's shorter, it's stubbier. And, it does have a little bit different fall.
And you can follow people with it.
Yeah.
I can skip better than the next guy because I've got that bait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I throw a stupid tube a lot. I don't know if you're just talking Texas rig tube with the.
No, I don't like Texas rig. I take a 3/8 or a half ounce, just chompers is what I've been using, just their brush jig, and I shove it up the back end of the tube. It takes a little bit of rigging, but you can rig up the night before 3 or 4 of them while you got time in your garage, and make it wet so it slides up in there, and you got to force it up in there, and then once you get it up in the tube, the tubes are hollow. Then you got to get the brush, the fiber weed guard out of there, so that takes a little bit of maneuvering. But once you get it rigged, well, shoot, you're going to have that thing for a long time then. I mean, it's going to last, you're not going to tear up your plastic very easily. You're going to catch, you can catch 30, 40 fish on one tube then. And so once you get it rigged, it's pretty good. I mean, you'll eventually lose it somewhere and it'll get stuck in something, but that's a good bait.
Huh. That's how I used to rig my tubes a long time ago. And then I started doing the stupid tube thing. So it's interesting. That's like it's kind of a hybrid of a tech.
It's a half jig.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But you still get the benefit of it being weedless versus just an open hook. You got the weed guard. But you still get that spiral fall that you don't get from the Texas rig. So that's interesting. I need to pursue that a little bit more. C4's got one more question before we wrap it up. If the government shuts down, will any of the ramps be affected? People on Mark Twain page are talking about that. I
don't believe so. Not here. No, I mean, the government seems like they shut down like every other year nowadays.
It used to be alarming, and now it's like
again.
Yeah, again, really. It's like
no, we'll be fine here.
Yeah, that's good to hear. If not, just go to the park. Go to the what do they call that outside of PBT back there? Just find you a nice yard and dump your boat.
Go to Lynn Creek boat ramp. Go see what's his name, Danny.
Yeah.
Or go see one of the private boat ramps that you just pay a little bit of money for, and
there's 1,000
you'll be fine there. Red Oak. I mean, there's a bunch of little resorts. My friends at Point Randall Resort, they'll take your money.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up, man. It's been a good stream, Jack. I really appreciate it.
Hey, good luck to you this weekend, man. We need to talk about your tournament.
Yeah. We'll hopefully I'm fishing that regional. I qualified for the regional in the Illini division at Quad Cities. It's on the Mississippi River, basically Iowa, Northern Illinois border, and it's a Friday, Saturday deal. I'm heading up there blind. I'm just going to jump in the boat Friday morning and go fishing. I don't know what to expect other than it's going to be, I think, a power fishing deal. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Been watching, I was telling Jack before we went live, there's a few content creators out there that have a few videos that I've watched. And other than that, I'm just going to go up there and try to keep my bait wet. And, it's going to be interesting because they've changed up the regionals this year to where it used to be 4 divisions and 160 boats in the regionals. And now it's 2 divisions and they're shooting for 120. But man, the BFL numbers have really been down. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, only 100 or even less than that showing up for this regional. And they had some controversy in this same regional last year because they had issues with the ramp location. They had to change the ramp locations, and the fishing was tough. And I heard several boaters went home on the second day after the first day, which screwed a bunch of the co-anglers. And there were several boats that had 2 co-anglers. You know, they doubled up the co-anglers in the tournament, which is
unfair.
I mean, it's so hard to fish with 3 people in the boat. So I hope
unfair.
It is unfair. I hope that doesn't happen. But you know, I qualified for the Kentucky Lake, the LBL division, BFL2. I just got that email today, and that's on Dale Hollow. But my sister's getting married for that regional, so I can't attend that. But we'll go up there. We'll keep our bait wet, and we'll have a good time. It should be some good content because you know, it's a new fishery. It's something that I haven't covered on my channel, so I'm excited. I'm always excited when I go to a new place just to learn it a little bit, and then it just adds a little bit of flavor to the YouTube channel. So
yeah, I mean, it's gonna be shallower water. It's gonna be a river system. So, and you're gonna be north. So those are all 3 factors saying that water temperature is gonna be cooler. You might be seeing some grass dying off, so it might be important to find the fresh grass. It's a lot of stuff that I'm not familiar with. Being in an Ozark, you know, I'm a dock guy. I'm a deep water guy. It's gonna be a lot different for a guy like me. You got a lot of experience over in Illinois, which has got a lot of grass,
right?
So that'll help you. And man, you've been doing this a number of years now. You know, I mean, you got to fish what's in front of you and figure out what's going to work behind the other guy, which is not easy.
No, I'll just keep it simple. You know, I got a few confidence baits. I'll be flipping. I really had a lot of confidence on that big bite baits flip around and find out. It's just a little beaver style bait. I'll Texas rig that. I'll throw a black and blue jig. It's funny you were mentioning the black and blue jig. That's in those videos. That was one of the baits that I saw some guys catch fish on. So definitely be throwing a black and blue jig, wacky rig, shaky head, and I'll probably have a buzz bait and a spinner bait or a chatter bait. And I plan on having 5 to 6 rods, and it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. I'm not going to.
They talk a lot about frogs up there.
Yeah, I don't think I will take a frog rod for sure, and I'll find out. That's one of the disadvantages of not having a day on the water to go out and kind of look at things. Like I said, I don't have anybody to fish with. I haven't been able to get a hold of anybody to jump in the boat with, so I won't have a look at the water. My first look at the actual water will be, well, I'll drive around it, you know, in my car when I get there, but actually on the water will be tournament morning. But I'll talk to my boater and see if there is the opportunity to, you know, fish grass. But from what I saw, there wasn't any grass available on that section of the river. You know, lacrosse is totally different. But this is still, from what I saw, the grass didn't play. But I could be wrong. Just like I said, there's not a lot of content out there on it. So, you know, I'll take that stuff up there. And if it's going to play, then I'll take it with me. If not, I'll just leave it in the truck and focus on the other stuff. Well,
man, I've seen you catch fish behind me. So you're going to be going up there. You'll be doing fine. Just try to stay confident up there, and you know, just there's an element of luck in this game still. You know, just try to stay positive and you enjoy yourself, because that's going to be a whole different experience. It's going to be flat, and you know, another thing about up there is they used to really whack them. You know, like 10, 12 years ago, it seemed like that area was on fire, and it has not been the same the last few years.
Yeah. They got a 14-inch length limit, which I always like. It's funny how that works, though. You catch a lot of 13 and 7/8-inch fish on a 14-inch limit, and you'll catch a lot of 14 and 7/8-inch fish on a 15-inch limit. It's like they know where to stop growing for a little bit. I don't understand.
My phone is at 1% now too. So
all right, brother. I appreciate it.
Guys, everybody, whether you're going up north, you're coming for the bash, or you're going somewhere else, everybody's fishing tournaments right now. Good luck. Be safe out there, and swing hard, because you don't want to mess up right now.
Yep, that's right. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that hung out with us tonight.